Welcome back to another episode of Transforming Trauma to Triumph. I'm your host, Diana Min, and we have a very special guest today, Mr. Dennis Miller, who is an expert in nonprofit leadership and a best-selling author. Dennis, welcome.
Nice to be here, Diana. Well, good to see you.
Yes, yes. Well, for our audience who isn't familiar with you and your work, please let us know who you are, what you do, and who you help in the world.
Yeah, well, for the past 16 years, my firm, Dennis C. Miller Associates, Inc., we do executive search in the nonprofit space. We do, CEO, COO type searches for the nonprofit community around the country. We do a tremendous amount of board and leadership training. I said I've written, 5 successful books, and we do a lot of webinars and workshops around the country. And so, and try to give back and help as many people as we can is kind of what we do, what I do.
Beautiful. So what was the journey from you, being here where you are, doing the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, well, about 4 years ago, I wrote a book called, my 4th book at the time, called Moppin', M-O-P-P-I-N, like mopping floors. And the title is Moppin' Floors, the CEO, From Hopelessness and Failure to Happiness and Success. So I kind of kept a secret for most of my life. My wife knew. My wife is Gladys. We call her G-Lo, just like J-Lo. We call her G-Lo. So basically my story was this. I spent in the past 16 years about a successful business and nonprofit leadership. Before that, I spent 25 years in the hospital and healthcare industry. I ran 2 major medical centers and foundation. I was a corporate executive, did very well. But the secret I kind of kept was that I really grew up really emotionally traumatized by my dad, who was always a very talented man, Diana. He was very disturbed, personality dysfunction. In many ways, as I learned later in life, I think he had seriously some gender identity issues. Mm-hmm. And he just had his priorities warped. It was like, how many kids would your mother have to tell you your father's coming home, get out of the backyard, he doesn't want you playing on the grass? That's not an unusual thing. So I kind of, make a long story short, I kind of went through a very difficult childhood. I had certainly behavioral problems in grammar school, not so much in high school. Academically, I didn't do well in high school, even though I was kind of an athlete, a social butterfly, had to lead the play. Always knew I was smart, but did poorly academically, didn't get into any college, graduated at the bottom of my high school class. Went to a county college, but by the time I was 20 years old, I was beyond distraught, despairing, anxious, depressed. Felt like an orphan. Had no family connections, no emotional connection to anybody, alone. Couldn't cope with life, and self-admitted myself to a psychiatric hospital. I was there for a short period of time. A local priest came to visit me. Name was Father Ganley. Had a very calm demeanor about himself. One day I knocked on his door and I just started crying my eyes out, and the rest was kind of history. The healing process began. And so back, when I was 21, he got me into a sort of a program that, I had a lot of support, called the Day Hospital Program, a lot of structure, began to like myself better, and began to, kind of grow and develop and think about a better life for myself, and started writing in a journal. But I still had difficulty separating myself from my parents' household, because I was so alone, I didn't want to be alone. Yeah. And by the time I was 24, though, my father just threw me out of the house one day, came home in a bad mood, which is very common. So I found myself living on the street. I got a room in the YMCA in town near my house. And I found a job cleaning bathrooms at the Ramada Inn in Edison. And then got a room in a boarding house, and that's where I wrote the book, Moppin' Floors, the CEO. And I decided, somehow I coached myself, which was amazing. I just I instinctively, Diana, I said something like, Dennis, I was cleaning bathrooms and delivering linens to the maids for a year. I was like 24. And actually, I wasn't unhappy. I wasn't unhappy because I was on my own. I had my own place. I wasn't actually unhappy. I hadn't much of a social life, but I wasn't really unhappy. And I said, all right, Dennis, you may think you're going to be Leo Tolstoy, the next War and Peace author, but, if you don't go to get education, you're not going to get ahead.
Yeah.
And it was my 5th high school reunion. I was embarrassed to go because I wasn't doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to write a letter to the college presidents, and I got into every college. And I wrote to New Jersey and went to Rutgers and graduated tops of my class and went on to Columbia Grad School. And the rest was history.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
What a journey.
Yeah.
I love that you said the healing process started,
Yes.
right? Because it's a process, right? It's like, you know, whatever that journey looks like for anybody, there's always that moment that it's like, okay, once the healing process started, it starts to open up all the things that we have maybe kept hidden for so long, or kept stifled or ignored for so long.
Yeah, what it was that, I mean, I had gone to see I had gone to school at night, but at a state college, but I couldn't handle it, and I sort of dropped out. But and I went to visit her, and she was a professor in philosophy, and her name was Kathy Bean, and her husband was a sculptor. And I remember going up to see their farmhouse, but she thought I was just trying to get out of going to Vietnam War. She didn't think, and I wasn't open too much about what was going on. But eventually, when I was at the bottom end and went to a therapy session in New York City, and I think it was called Primal Scream, and I remember John Lennon, the Beatles had done that. So let me try that, and I was so despondent. I thank God I knocked on his door, and the first time ever I felt connected to somebody, and that was the healing, was an emotional connection.
Yeah.
That I didn't feel so alone anymore. I had a friend. It's like what, I didn't know what it was like to have a parent. Didn't know what it was like to have, I mean, I had parents, but not real. I always felt like an orphan because I didn't have a relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was unfortunately a good woman, very nice person, both deceased, but she was kind of withdrawn and sad, because she was abused emotionally, and my dad was in his own world.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the healing process right there when I knocked on that man's door, and I went to see him for 6 months. He used to throw pebbles at the window just to say, "Father, you there? Help me." And so reaching out was the first step. And everybody who's your listener, just that reaching out, that one time grabbing for that life raft, grabbing for that rope, grabbing for your next one, and grabbing for something to hold on to is what did it. Yeah.
Right. For me, it was like a healer that I had reached out to.
Yeah.
In that moment, when I really wanted to probably like not take my own life, but disappear, in those moments of worthlessness and withdrawn, like you said, despondent. And that moment changed my life forever. And so, I can relate to really being in a place of just like, anyone help me, like literally anyone right now.
Yeah, I was, I look back. I mean, this was obviously, some 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I look back, Diana, and I'm like, I look back and say, I gave myself some really good advice.
Yeah.
And I look back and say, how did I do that? How did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
I do remember, definitely, I mean, I never thought about taking my life, per se, but I remember thinking to myself, I only had one life to live and I don't want to blow it. And so I knew life was very precious, and it is precious. But I look back and think, God, boy, I made the right choice to go see him. He helped me get the help I needed. And then I got the help I needed myself because I eventually, physically separated from my parents and my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Who came looking for me, and I told him I wasn't going back. And so here I was, 25 years old, 24 years old, cleaning bathrooms. Graduated Rutgers again at the age of 28, a little late bloomer.
Yeah.
Went to grad school at Columbia University School of Public Health and finished there around when I was about 29, almost 30. And here I am 7 years later. I'm running a major medical center in New Jersey.
Incredible.
Corporate executive at the age of 42, and president and CEO of another medical center and foundation in New Jersey at the age of 49.
Yeah.
Kept going until we had a lot of challenges, a lot of good things, and we had a lot of difficult challenges at the hospital that I was with that I chronicled in my book, Mop and Floors, the CEO. But today I'm kind of a, very happy guy, productive, learned a lot of life lessons, things I've learned intuitively, uh, lessons I've learned that I'd like to, share with yourself and some audience about things that have made, my life better. And some of those just quickly is ones that I learned that, depression is not a personality fault. It's a chemical imbalance, and it's a result usually of loss or trauma, and it can be treated. And so I was a very depressed guy, and thankfully I'm not depressed.
Right.
I also learned through life that very incremental, small achievements leads to growing self-confidence. So just the fact that I, went back to school and, and would study hard and then did well on a test, and each little thing precipitated something else. But but by the time I went back emotionally, I realized that I was actually a very bright kid, but I had these images of myself that were given to me through my youth that I was, pretty much an idiot or a failure or no good. And I had to overcome that. And then a lot of things I had to learn. You got to take responsibility for yourself, as you did, Diana. So, at some point you got to stop blaming your parents and your teachers and your neighbors and everybody else. And the other thing you need to have is you need to have some vision for your life and have a kind of a view of what you like your life to be, and kind of a plan. And then you got to be prepared for the perseverance of what it takes just to keep going, because there's no straight lines in life at all. You know this well.
Yeah.
And it's you're bouncing up and down, but you got to stay with it. And my philosophy was every time I fell down, dust your pants back off and get on your feet again. Even when you get knocked 3 times down in a row, you still get up and you got 7 more rounds of the fight.
Yeah.
And the last thing I realized was that for me, it really was interesting. I just learned that when I was president of the medical center, in many ways, and I think this was, it may be true of everybody now, but it was mostly true of men back then, that men, or at least I did, identify with my title. I was president CEO. I was Mr. Miller. And when I lost that position and title and presidency, it was like, well, who was I?
Wow.
And I began to realize, through a therapeutic process, I realized that who I was how I treated people and how I behaved to people, my wife, my kids, my colleagues. And I realized that I really was a very loving man, very caring, compassionate guy.
Yeah.
And so my identity changed from an external identification of my title, because it was always like, oh, we got a big house. I make more money than they should be paying me. I'm ashamed how much money I'm making. And back then, I mean, it was a lot. Still a lot of money. It was a lot of money then. Now it's like Babe Ruth made a lot of money. Now it's like, what Babe Ruth would be jealous anyway. But I began to realize happiness is a goal in life that's crucial. And I've learned over my years that there are a lot of successful people who aren't happy.
Right.
But I rarely have met a happy person who's not successful. And so not pursuing happiness in the sense of I'm going to sit on the beach and smoke weed and have someone else bring me, food and flowers every night, all that kind of world. But I do think, it's capable for all of us to be happy. Happiness for me was feeling connected to my family, loving, and my work. And I'll tell you one other thing, which was really interesting, was that, we used to go on a lot of very nice vacations. And I used to look forward to going on vacations. And I'm planning a vacation right now. I'm going to go out hopefully to Hawaii, Kauai for the holidays. I'm hoping with my kids and my grandson.
Beautiful.
I can get to see what the quarantine business is about. But anyway, I get on vacation. This is like, 10, 20, whatever years ago. And I find myself being like a little miserable, stuck. Like, Dennis, you're in Aruba. It's 85 degrees. It's sunny out, and you're kind of miserable. I'm like, how is this possible? So I called my analyst up one day, and he said to me, Dennis, listen, he told me, he said, you know, children who don't have relationship with parents, don't have a real emotional relationship, they identify with them. So you identify with your mother who's very depressed and alone. You identify with, that's your way of loving your mother. Mm. And I didn't realize it. He goes, but your mother, she's not gonna, you're not gonna kill her if you're happy. It's okay to be happy, enjoy yourself with your wife and your kids in Aruba. And it was almost like, really, it's okay? And I remember thinking to myself, hey, it's okay. I don't have to be guilty. And it was interesting that I never dawned on me the connection between how children can identify with a parent and be like them as a way of loving them. So a lot of people are miserable and happy because their parents were miserable and happy, and they think that's their way of connecting to them. Yeah. And so I had to make a lot of interesting changes and observations, and I've had a lot of people helping me. And I'm very fortunate to have a very supportive wife. I'm married into my 40th year. She should get the gold medal, that's for sure. And two wonderful, wonderful children, just wonderful kids. David and Douglas are just fabulous kids. But so anyway, I learned a lot from my trauma, and so that's a little bit about myself.
That's that's an amazing story and such a powerful journey. And what I noticed, the common thread between all of those situations is that you continue to persevere. And what I see there is this sense of self-worth. Even when you didn't get that, validation or that love from your parents or your home or your environment, but there was like this intrinsic self-worth within you that was like, no, I have a vision for my life. I want something better for myself. I deserve something, and I'm worth getting up after being knocked down 3 times, right? Because there's a lot of people that, may not have gotten up again because to them, or in their belief system, like you said, it wasn't worth it, or they're not worth it, right? And that thread in all of those situations was just like, no, you decided like, no, I am worth it, my life is worth it, and I'm going to try harder.
No, you hit the nail right on the head. It's interesting because even though I kind of grew up with a very poor self-image and self-worth, and never felt I made my parents happy, and never pleased my parents, and certainly didn't please my teachers, but there was a part of me on some level that loved myself.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that said, no, I'm not that. And I'm going to fight you. I'm going to reject that. Mm-hmm. And I deserve to be happy. I deserve to find my place in life. I deserve to have a good life. Yeah. So even when I was like, still 26 or so, and, taking odd jobs with an excavation and grading company to be outside in the wintertime with trucks and landscaping, and, kind of wishing someday, I wish I had, wife and kids and, the house with the picket fence and all that kind of stuff. I wish I had that kind of relationship, Yeah. I didn't give up on it. I had regrets about relationships I didn't keep and this and that in high school and all that stuff. But so the idea is you can change your life, but you can't do it just by yourself. Sometimes I hear my youngest sometimes, well, I'm thinking, well, you can't do it by yourself. You need a friend, a colleague, a partner. You need someone to help you refill your own energy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Or to reflect back to, your own truth and your own abilities, right? Because I think, even through me coaching clients and things like that, what's helpful is they like you always had it. You always had that will, you always had the strength, you always had everything you needed. But sometimes we can't, like that belief system that you had to restructure, right? It's hard for us to see, even though you loved yourself, you had to build that confidence up to be like, wait, I am smart. I do have all these capabilities, right? And sometimes, again, reaching for that help, right? Or reaching to do something to reflect back to, wait, I do have what it takes. I am worthy, and I can do this, right? And so that's where that help, I think, is really beneficial. It has been for me in my life as well.
Yeah, what I find in my work is that I always tell people jokingly, I said I'm not intellectually that bright, but emotionally I'm really bright. I have a high EQ, but not an IQ. I don't think I have it. I'm pretty sure I don't have a good IQ. I don't pass, Jeopardy. After sports in U.S. cities, I'm not, I don't know the stuff these people know is fabulous, but I have a good instinct about people. And I long time ago, I just knew that I was going to treat people, Diana, the way that I wanted to be treated. It was like I was not going to treat people the way my father treated people or me, or my brothers and my mom. And so what I've learned over the years, which I think has enabled me to be very successful in business, and we're a very successful firm. Dennis E. Miller Associates is a very successful firm. Is that I have good instincts for people. I can see people. By the way, as an example, I've encouraged people, many of them, to throw their hat in the ring for a promotion in their organization. I've identified a lot of people to say, I think you should throw your hat in the ring for this president's job, CEO's job. I think you'd be good at it, no harm. And so I'm good at identifying people and can help with leadership coaching and board coaching, because I know how to be an effective board and how to be an effective leader. But it's the emotional insights, the emotional connections for me that I didn't have as a kid. I lived in a functional, world, but no emotional life, holidays weren't happy. It was a miserable place to be at home, and holidays and Christmas. The Christmas songs may have been singing, but it wasn't any feeling like that in my house.
Right.
The jingle bells were going off, but there was no joy in the household. My father literally would say to my mother, Christmas Day, if this, and he'd get a gift, he'd say, if this is what I think it is, someone's going to get a punch in the mouth. Now, how can a guy do that? It's horrible. How would my mother feel? Embarrassed. So we grew up, and I didn't know any different. When people used to tell me, Diana, that, as a kid, when people said to me, I'm going on my vacation with my parents, I said, I feel bad. Oh my God, Johnny's going on vacation with his parents. I'm like, and I had no idea that life was different than mine. I just thought that, well, that's what it is. Parents suck, vacations suck, life sucks. Why would you want to be with your parents? I'm like, I feel bad for Johnny. Didn't realize Johnny was having a good time on vacation. I didn't know.
So for maybe people in our audience that are listening, or maybe they're going through a tough time, or maybe things are just really challenging and dark right now with everything going on in the world, what is one thing that you can offer them that they can do today and start implementing today in their lives to maybe start taking steps on their own journey?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dan. It's a very good question. The first thing I'd say is love yourself. Love yourself. Start loving yourself. If you never felt loved and never been loved, perhaps you were never loved. Mm-hmm. And never felt it. And you're lonely and distraught, and maybe you're abusing drugs, and maybe behaving in ways that aren't beneficial to you, whatever. Mm-hmm. Today, start by loving yourself. Be a friend to yourself. I think that is the number one top advice I give someone: love yourself. And then the second thing, when you're ready for it, as Diana, as you know very well through your own life journey and the work you do, fabulous coaching and everything in your business and work I do, in many ways we do some similar work, is the reach out for someone. And, it's a big step, but reach out and tell someone kind of what's going on. You have to go out and just, tell them, you don't go through life alone. Yeah. Find someone. I don't care if it's online, virtual. Find somebody in your neighborhood, in your apartment complex, in your work life, in your church or your temple, whatever community you have. Mm-hmm. Find a connection. And if you have a love for yourself and a connection, and then you can start loving somebody else, you're home free, bro. You're home free. You're home free.
Yes. Oh man, I think, it really is all about connection, right? And I, through my own work of my own healing journey, really understanding there was a long time where it was hard for me to ask for help and accept help.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. And it's not easy for anybody.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not easy for anybody. And it's not easy for anybody. But and maybe I'm old fashioned, but I think sometimes it's harder. Well, it's interesting. It used to be harder for men. Now, what's happening in the business world,
Mm.
unfortunately, a lot of women who become business owners, they think they got to act like men, and and that's not a good thing. Always, just not a good thing.
No, no.
And I think so. And I would, anybody, I've written a lot of stuff. So, my website is DennisCMiller.com. You got to put C in. If you don't, there's actually a furniture store in Brooklyn, Dennis Miller Associates. So if you email Dennis at Dennis Miller Associates, you get furniture store in Brooklyn. If you email me, Dennis at DennisC, as in CharlesMiller.com,
Uh-huh.
MILLER, I actually happy to chat with you. And I've written a number of books and articles and just, but join me on LinkedIn, join me on Facebook, whatever, email me. Happy to talk to anybody who needs any help. And love passing on the good word, Diane. It's been phenomenally enjoyable just to talk, to see you and chat with you.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think, the whole reason of putting this summit together for me was to be able to provide that network and that community for people to understand that you're not alone. There are resources out there. There are people out there that are offering work, help, support in all the ways that can help uplift you out of your situation. And Dennis's amazing story is definitely a testament to the strength of the human spirit, and also the love that needs to come from within in order to really create the life that you envision for yourself. And so thank you, Dennis, so much for being here and sharing your story, sharing your heart with us and your work, and just being an inspiration, really.
Well, then I agree with Ambassador on that you're not alone. There's a lot of people here wanting to help everybody else. And, you know, just that knock on the door, hey, you got a chance for a cup of coffee. And I just see if I can talk with someone. So listen, have a great day. Continue doing the fabulous work you do in your coaching life. And let's stay in touch and talk again soon.
Absolutely, yes. And for those of you in the audience who want to get connected with Dennis's work, his links will be attached to the email that you got this interview in, as well as on the page this interview is hosted on. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Transforming Trauma to Triumph, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.